Truth Bombers Podcast.
Truth Bombers Podcast.
The group chat turned podcast with your hosts, Russ, Lockie, and BJ.
How are you?
Yeah, good, man. Good.
Staying in hospital?
Staying out trying.
You've had a haircut.
Yeah, I look fucking fresh.
You do look fresh, mate. You always look good. Best dressed on the podcast most weeks.
I had to look good. I went to a Bombers game, so I had to try and look good for the boys.
Mate, they don't try for you. Why would you try for them?
I'm losing hope every week. I was trying to think about things we're going to say, like the good for this week. And I'm like, I don't know if I have any.
Starting to get a little bit like that. Maybe a good way to kick it off. Episode 26.
Yep.
Trying to find roses amongst the thorns, or trying to find a skerrig of a diamond amongst all this rough. Lockie, how are you, mate?
I'm good, lads. How are we?
We're doing all right. Well, boys, I got a few messages from Russ while he was at the game pretty early on. It was nice to see Tipper on the ground. Unfortunately, he wasn't wearing a red and black jersey and the number, what was he, 43?
Yeah, I think so.
Number 43 running out there. And as much as it'll hurt to say goodbye, I'm actually really disappointed. It's like everything that he brings to the game is exactly what our game is missing right now. And I don't think we've ever needed Tipper more. But wish him well in his endeavors after football. A pretty painful watch on Saturday night. Locke, your thoughts, mate?
Just incredibly frustrated, and very similar to you, Russ. Maybe a few weeks ago, I was thinking, looking at the ladder, I was like, okay, well, we're much better than North and we're much better than West Coast. We are just as bad as those two sides.
We're shit. There's no way to sum it up. Like, we're shit. We're soft. We're weak. We're not skillful. There's no leadership. Like, every factor you want in a football club. Well, after watching, 1 week, they reckon they will get there's some soul searching. If this was soul searching after last week and getting up for an Indigenous round, and the same happens every 3 weeks that we hit a new low and there's soul searching. And, if this is what they're coming up with, it's a bit worrying.
I called Tex Wanganeen being the Medi sub, the one Indigenous player that we've got on our list currently to be the Medi sub for a Dreamtime. And I said it would be a tragedy if he didn't get on. I think he got on for 3.5 minutes left in the last quarter and still manufactured a score involvement, which is, we'd only had another 7 of those for the game. So
Francis missed him when he was out in the open, could have kicked a Dreamtime goal.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into it. I mean, we'll start with the good, like we usually do. There won't be too much to cover.
Pass. I'll pass that one.
I thought Red Dog was probably my only real good. He seemed to be the only bloke that was actually out there having a bit of a crack. Don't mind the high elbow on Prestia. Granted, it was probably trying to be more of a chest jab and it slipped up and caught him high. I think it's a pretty stiff week, seeing as Rowbottom gets a week for almost taking Zach Merritt's head completely off his shoulders the week before. How those two are equivalent knocks is absolutely beyond me. But I thought he was very impressive. 29 touches, 25 of them kicks, which is something we see too often, and 5 tackles.
Good point.
Good. There's my one. Parrish, 8 tackles, Shield, 7 tackles, Heppel, 6 tackles. So at least there's a bit more, I guess, intent there. Although I probably never said this in my life, but I actually agree with Kane Corns. A lot of those kind of standing up for your mates, that cheap shot by that shit hack Tom Lynch on Guelphy, but even the remonstrating looked like it was as lackluster as the rest of the effort that gets put into our game. Bit of private schoolboy push and shove, no real malice or intent behind it, just doing it to be sure that the media doesn't come out again this week and be still no fight, right? And it almost became distracting, I feel, for the rest of the game. It was almost every opportunity to actually fly the flag. And I think what we're missing is the aggression we want to see is aggression and intent with the football, sticking your head over the ball and running a straight line, or running the straight line to get the ball and taking someone out, or laying some big hits and really like putting someone in the dirt, not waiting until like there's something gone wrong and then pretending to push and shove for a 2 to 3 minute period of time. And probably what epitomizes that the most is like Richmond were laughing at us. Like we're remonstrating and supposed to be getting up in their face. They're laughing at us to the point where Nankervis, after Brian kicks his first goal, comes in and tries to take on half the lineup. Like that's basically where we're at, is like, even when we're trying to show fight, the rest of the competition is pissing their pants.
Yeah, kind of like a little brother sticking up for trying to act like he's tough and can take on the older brother. It's, yeah, I see what you mean.
At least there was something, though. The one thing that really disappointed me, I know we're trying to talk about goods. All right, I'll give you a good. The scoreline flattered us. There was a good.
Yeah.
How we were still a couple of kicks in it in that last quarter was beyond me. Like there was one point we kicked a couple in a row. And I was like, how are we only a couple of kicks, straight kicks away from being in this game? It was very flattering.
Do you reckon if Draper had kicked that soccer off the ground attempt, that might have been a turning point? That might have been a point at that moment where we thought, hey, we actually are only 2 goals out of this. We might see a little bit of resurgence.
No.
Yeah, agreed.
Gotta keep it blunt.
All right. Well, let's get to the bad. Do you want to kick us off, Locke?
All right. I think we got some plaudits in the first quarter for our effort, and then it massively dropped off in the second quarter. That first quarter effort should be non-negotiable every single week, every single quarter. I don't want to hear like Truck in the press conference afterwards being like, oh, well, we had a response from last week. The response should just be the bare minimum. Like, I think if we're celebrating the players for that, like when I expect that to be just like every single week, every single quarter, I think maybe that's part of the problem.
Well, maybe Truck is having the same time we are difficulty finding good. And that's what he's doing, is really searching and really having a dig. So he's pulling up shit like that should be non-negotiable, right?
But I hope so. But at the same time, I think like from the outside looking in, I want Truck, and I know Heppel's not that player, but I need them to be a bit tougher with the players. Because at the moment, it sort of looks like they're letting a lot of shit slide. And of course, they're a young, inexperienced side. But at the same time, like overall, they're nowhere near an AFL quality side at the moment.
Oh, agree. Russ?
Yeah, I very much agree with that. I think the same. I sort of looked in. Someone asked me about what I thought about the game, and it's sort of before what was going to happen or how it was going to run out. And I knew that probably come out firing that first quarter, show a bit of fight. And as soon as the second, that first quarter was over, they start getting a little bit tighter, they'll just forget that they're supposed to put in that extra effort. They're going to forget to put in that extra, fineness, I guess. And it showed. Like, it's one quarter is just not good enough. I completely agree with you, Lockie.
Yeah. I've got a few bads, and I'm struggling to where to draw the line on what becomes bad and ugly, but I'll start with this one. Jaden Laverde now tries to lead into every situation head first in order to draw a free kick, and it is killing us. And he's going to get hurt, and we can't afford to lose another key defender. And it's just a terrible look, and it is incredibly obvious that that's what he's doing.
Yeah, I know one situation that happened on the weekend, and I thought he was pretty lucky not to get called holding the ball, because he did lead with his head. And I know sometimes the umps look for that. So it's something hopefully that's being addressed.
Yeah. My other one, we're playing 3 talls, Wright, Bryan, and Draper, and Peter Wright is still having to go and ruck and be involved across the half back line when he should be the deepest forward non-negotiably. And
it shows every single time we do that. He goes from getting bags to barely getting a goal. Like every time, it's the correlation's there. It's pretty clear. They make him work in the ruck, and he doesn't kick a bag, and we need someone to kick a bag.
I was pretty disappointed with the selection of his, to be honest, leaving out Phillips. I thought after last week's performance, Draper or Bryan didn't really deserve to keep their spot. And I would have loved to see Phillips come in, and hopefully this week, same thing happens. Phillips played in the VFL. I'd love to see him come in, drop Draper, who had 0 disposals for the first half of the Dreamtime match.
Yeah. Agree. Bring in Flip.
Yes.
Any other bads, boys, before we move to uglies?
Just the kicking efficiency and our skill set is just so lacking. We talk about not being an AFL side, like these kicks that we just pop up in the air, and like when we're trying to do a switch, there's no penetration in them. It gives the defenders enough time to actually get onto a man. Kelly, geez, I've liked what he's done at the start of the season, but his kicking efficiency is absolutely dreadful going into the Dreamtime game.
Funny you should say that, Russ, because I must have blinked and missed the one time we actually tried to switch, because as far as I could tell, the game plan was wait until the defense has had enough time to run back and set up, and then get super slowed down the line to a contest and hope at best we can knock the ball out of bounds and start again before losing a centre bounce clearance or a throw-in clearance.
There was exactly one switch I remember, and it was Dyson Heppel, and his kick was so high and slow, the entire Richmond side had shifted across by the time it reached our player. It was embarrassing.
That's, I think, I might be thinking the same one. I remember that quite clearly.
All right, let's do the ugly. Like this week was supposed to be, we've stripped the game plan back to basics. And as far as I can tell, like I said, unless the game plan is hold the ball up until the opposition's defense has time to set up before moving it on, then it's either that or we don't have a fucking game plan. Like, I love football. I would watch almost every game if I could. And the fact they play 5 on a Saturday does my head in, because I'm not, you're going to miss one. But we are so boring to watch with the ball. Like, I'm not actually enjoying watching the game for the team that I support when we're actually playing. It's dog shit to watch.
Great. And I was going to bring up our game style and our ugly. The amount of times we hit a player who had a little bit of space in front of them and they stopped, waited for someone to man the mark, and then bombed it down the line, and we were either outmarked or like it was a 50-50 contest. It was embarrassing. And we didn't attempt that attacking kick into the middle enough, like the corridor. We didn't link up with hand passes enough. We didn't have a switch kick. Someone like Redmond, who is that penetrating kick, trying to kick it across the field and try to open up a different avenue. Like, I actually felt like maybe they were overcoached this week, because it was sort of like the players were thinking, like, what do I do next? And they slowed down rather than just like, fucking go.
Yeah. Agree. Russell?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens this week with no Redmond. I've been a big fan of him all season, and I think he's really taken that next step. And I think we're going to miss having that sort of halfback kick coming back off there. Like you said, he's the only one really doing it at the moment. Hines not as fast as he was, or penetrating lines. I think we're really going to miss him. And I didn't think we'd say that sort of at the start of the year, but that's a huge out.
We thought Redmond would be the bloke that would get squeezed out of the team, and very quickly he's become like the first magnet you pop on the board for the back six.
Yeah, his aggression, his possessions, his penetrating kicks. Holding people accountable, like he was giving people sprays when they weren't putting the work rate in, which we haven't seen from anyone else.
Yeah.
He's really done a well for cemented himself in that best 22.
For sure. I think actually even beyond that too, rather than just cementing himself on the side, I actually think he started displaying even more like leadership quality. And that's what I want to see. I want to see someone that's okay to spray Dylan Shield for not playing his role. Or for not doing what he's supposed to do, because at the moment it's like Heppel's not. That should be Heppel. That's Heppel's role back there, and he's not doing it. So kudos to Redmond for actually like being one to take it on himself and actually do it. Another ugly for you. This goddamn score review, like the Dustin Martin one, took them like 5 minutes. Like It's
Yeah.
either there's conclusive evidence and you can tell, or you can't. And if you can't, it's the umpire's call. That should take no longer than 30 seconds. If you have to go searching 1,000 different angles from 6 different camera, like you talk about slowing down the game. The score review is the only thing that moves slower than we do, bringing the ball out of a defensive half. Like, it's a joke. It's a joke.
I remember the one you're talking about, and like we were thinking of going, what, clearly it's not getting overturned. The whole playing team looked up to the score to the big screen, saw how close it was, and then they just set up for the defensive kick in. So like all the players after one look at it going, all right, let's all, we're not going in the middle. Let's all just set up. And they were in their patterns and, started marking men. And then, 3 minutes later, we're still waiting for a review. Like, it's ridiculous. It's not there to catch the slightest touches. It's there to catch the hangers, the clear mistakes, which obviously that wasn't.
Yeah, I thought there was an even worse one where the umpire on the ground called touched, and then the goal umpire wanted a review, and it was the biggest touch ever. Like, it was the umpiring is such a joke at the moment. Like, we talk about other games as well as ours, but it's almost you can't waste your breath on it because it's like so poor that you'll just be talking for hours about one thing.
Agreed.
Wasn't the Brisbane Hawthorn game the most free kicks paid in a game in over a decade or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it was over 60 free kicks, and I watched the game, and some of the free kicks were like a farce, as in like you thought the umpire had been paid off, but they sort of squared up, and it was like someone got pushed in the shoulder, and they're like, "Oh, in the back free kick," and then they tried to square up the next one. It was like schoolyard stuff. It was embarrassing.
Lockie, I've got a question for you. Do you still fly the Tom Lynch flag? Is he still after his performance against us on Saturday to still qualify him as the best forward in the league just because he's winning the Coleman?
he is better than Peter Wright, and I'll stand by that. And same with Max King. Those two guys. If you think that Peter Wright's better than those two forwards, then we're going to be in the worst position for the next 10 years if you're not getting good players to the club because we're overhype our own players.
Lynch is shit. Actually, a funny conversation that we were having, Locke, and annoyingly so, there's a Carlton supporter sitting over here listening in. But probably the biggest ugly from this week is we watched the Carlton Sydney game, and what Carlton are doing this year is like it's exciting football, it's fast-paced football, and it's hard football. And you talk about Essendon wanting to be this blue-collar, like tough, like hard-working, run both ways football club. Carlton's doing it so much better than we are. And that's what kills me the most is like they're good to watch, but you look at something like, not even the way that they go about it. And like their aggression is head over the ball aggression. Like their aggression is hard tackle, ride down into the dirt fairly. Like they're not looking to give away free kicks, but they put enough tackle pressure on that you start to worry the opposition out of the ball. The one that got me is you look at the response from Carlton when Kennedy hit Doc, right? As opposed to like when Lynch hit Guelphy. Like that's what I want to see. Kennedy's there with the hamstring ripped off the bone, can't move, and they're still laying the boots into him while he's there on the ground. Like that's flying your flag for someone on your team that's been hit like poorly, right? You put that against like McGrath and Parrish, like probably the two smallest stature blokes on our team, pushing someone 6 inches high, like you said before, like a little brother trying to fight the big brother. Like it's miles apart. And it kills me that it's like Carlton, a team that I've enjoyed not seeing them make finals for the last 10 years. Like they're doing everything that we want our club to stand for so much better than we are. And they're miles ahead of us.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I really enjoy watching Carlton this season. They play a really good brand of football. And I think the worst thing about this round, apart from being so frustrated watching us, was that Collingwood played a tough, uncompromising brand of football. They went over to Perth and won. Hawthorn, high scoring. They played Brisbane, one of the best teams in the comp. They won. Carlton, who you're talking about, played Sydney, a top 6 side in the comp. They won. What did we do? We were lucky to lose by 35 points. It should have been 50 or 60 points.
Yeah. And the one more ugly, the thing that kills me almost more than anything is seeing Essendon champions like Dean Solomon, James Hird, and McVeigh all in the coaching box for GWS. They make, I think, 9 list changes or something, come in together as a team. And I mean, granted, they did play West Coast, but they've come out and kicked 21 goals in a game, done them by 50 or 60 points, which is GWS were a team until not long ago, we were equal with points on the ladder, who are a team that are 10 goals better than a West Coast. But like you said, we've got West Coast and North coming up next month, and we are a coin flip at best at the moment to beat those sides. And I think both of those sides will be looking at us saying, here's our opportunity to go a game ahead, basically, and get off the bottom of the ladder. And potentially the only thing saving us at the moment is our percentage, which isn't good. It's just that teams like Sydney and Richmond haven't capitalized on their opportunity to put us away by 80 or 100 points, like has been done to North and West Coast this season.
Yep.
Russ?
Yeah, I agree. That's the first thing I thought when some of the game. How did we not lose by that much? And the percentage is one thing I never thought would be an advantage. After some of the games we've played, even the Melbourne game, we were pretty much, we were lucky they didn't kick away in that first quarter.
The only team we outscored on the weekend, interestingly enough, was Port Adelaide, who we played this week. They totaled 47 points to the Cats 82, and we totaled 48 to Richmond's 80. So, but I do have zero confidence going to Adelaide Oval to play Port this week.
I'm worried.
This will be the week Dixon comes back, Laverde goes to Dixon, and Dixon just gets back his groove. Another monster full forward that we just cannot take on, cannot handle.
Even without him, we'd still get smashed.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Any others to put in there, boys?
I had a question for you both, and I think it's pretty obvious, but I thought this was an interesting way of framing it. Are either of you proud of the Essendon Football Club at the moment?
No.
It's hard to sum up, are you proud of a club when, you know what? No, I'm not. And it's our 150th year, to be honest. And, I think we've got people leaving the club that are upset. You got, people that don't want to sign, putting off contract negotiations. We've got allegations that we're hijacking an Indigenous museum away from them, from a whole lot of people. It's not a good sign at the moment for us.
What was that?
So Xavier Campbell, I think, look, I don't want to quote an article that read it, but pretty much we refused to pay for some shipping on a statue to go, because the hangar, they've got an Indigenous museum there as well. Thanks to Michael Long's on the board. There's a lot of, it goes along with our club museum that's there. And one of the people on the board, there was a statue of her. She was a gold medalist, and we wouldn't pay the $2,000 to ship the statue over to the new museum. And she quit the board and said that, made some very interesting allegations about the footy club.
I've had a couple of people message me this week being like, Xavier Campbell is exactly the problem with the club. And the fact that he signed a 2-year deal extension is kind of like signing basically a death warrant on the head of the club for the next 2 years. I don't know anything about him. Do you guys know anything about him?
Well, this is a guy that, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, he was touted to be the headhunt, going to be the one that got headhunted for, Gill's job when he retired. He was known as being one of the best CEOs in the game. And then trying to drop out of favour the last couple of years. But yeah, like at one point, like he was, very well respected. I'm not quite sure why everyone hates him all of a sudden. Though it came out that a lot of the fans were upset that he was in the media all the time and giving his 2 cents, and he should stay in the boardroom and sort of be more behind the scenes rather than try and, get in the media, social media, which he listened to and kind of took a setback. And all of a sudden we're losing. People are like, oh, where is he? He needs to front up to the media. So it's, you catch-22, I guess.
I think, look, I'm not proud because I know like what we're capable of and we're not doing it. But at the same time too, it's like, it's not like you're like thinking about, maybe jumping ship and you go and like support another team. Like you kind of stick it through, thick and thin, but you reserve the right to have podcasts like this where you're like, what the fuck are we doing? I think the disappointing thing is the way that it's all lined up in terms of 150th year. And, there's that big sign on the wall of the change rooms that talks about like being custodians of the club, and that it's more than the individual, and it's all the people that are part of the club and all the past players and all that you're carrying. And it's like, that obviously means fuck all, because like we're not seeing any of it, So what about you, mate? Are you proud of the club right now?
Absolutely not. And so much to me is just the messaging that comes out of the club. It conflicts with what we see each week. So like all the blue collar Bombers bullshit, it's sort of like, well, we haven't showed that once this year. And when Heppel comes out and someone asks him about the game style and he says, like, we just want to support or celebrate each other. And it's like, what the fuck sort of answer is that? Like, it almost, at like all the injuries that sort of get swept under the rug, like, it's almost like as a supporter, you're being kept in the dark all the time of actually what's going on.
Yeah. Let me ask you boys a question. Does Rutten make it through this season?
I was chatting to a mate today about it who's a Bomber supporter, and I think if we only win, say, 4 games for the year, I couldn't see him coaching next season. Like, if we have a better run the second half of the season after the bye, then they keep him on, I believe, and he's got next season to prove it. But if we finish like wooden spooners, I don't see how he could keep his job.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was a big believer, even though we were shit at the start of the season, we'd start to get on a little bit of a run, or would show some sort of promise once we get some players back or play some easier opposition. And he, definitely coach out this year. Maybe he's got a little pressure next year, but he still coaches out next year as well. If we see the same thing can happen week after week, and even if we only, it's more, do we see anything that's coming out? At the moment, there's no game plan. The players aren't doing anything. There's no leadership. There's no nothing. There's no structure. You can tell that there's turmoil in the club. If we keep coming out and there's no game plan, he has to go. It's his second year. If he get coaches to all these losses with no light at the end of the tunnel, even if we don't win another game for the rest of the year, or we win 2 extra games, but at least we front up for at least 2 quarters and show some sort of style or some sort of system comes in. I'm worried for him. I reckon he's going to be gone if this happens after the bye.
I don't know. I reckon you need to let him see it out. Like,
there's no game plan. What do you see?
I know. But you look at like a lot of like, Hardwick was on the pressure cooker being out before Richmond finally like switched gears, and it's not the first kind of coach to do that that's been on the ropes. Buckley was the same. Clarkson was the same. Like, I think that the problem is you get into a Carlton-esque or a North Melbourne-esque approach where it's like you're giving them only, a finite amount of time, and then you're like, not done. And the next one, not done. And then it just becomes this culture just like churning through coach after coach after coach, for which like no decent coach is putting their hands up to be a part of. So I think that you want to avoid I think that there has to be a point where the board says, whatever Rutten put together that made us want to go with him as the head coach and give him the 3 years, like, you stick by that decision and you let him weather out his 3 years and give him the opportunity to actually make something of that. I think it becomes very easy to be like, oh, we're not winning games, like it must like new coach. Oh, we're not winning games, like new coach. Like, and at some point, I agree. Like, I don't necessarily think that Heppel has changed or his attitude has changed because Rutten's the coach. I just think it's coming more to the forefront, and it's becoming an issue now. And like if Truck goes, like you almost have to say Heppel goes too, because he's as much of the issue as like the coaching would be if you're just going to start cutting, right?
Yeah, 100%. I 100% agree with that. I think the Richmond thing's a bit different because they have bona fide superstars in their team that could take that next step. You look at some of the guys that, went on who had rough times and then went on for success after they got given the green light. There was cultural issues that they could see in the background that were changing. They could see that, Buckley did respond to almost getting fired and then did take on things and change. We've seen no change this year. Run's not new. Last year he coached a full season. From the talkings of the people that left the club who've talked honestly about the Run era starting, he 100%, when he had that transition year, he was in charge of everything from how they coached, the game plans. He was the one in the box. Worsfold might have been there that year, but from all reports, it was all his game plan and his style. So this is really his third year. And if we're playing the way we're playing with no game plan in the third year, well, how long is it going to take?
Yeah, and I agree with that, Russ, in the sense that if you could see a brand of football that they were playing each and every week and we just weren't good enough and the talent was the issue, then it's like, well, that it is what it is. But I don't see a brand of football.
Keep going.
Well, without that brand of football, it's sort of like what are we hoping for? We're hoping for Stringer to get back fit and kick 5 goals and have 30 possessions for us to compete in a game? Or without that brand, it almost doesn't matter who's in our side. We won't compete with the top sides anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And he's already told us what brand it is. We keep saying. He's openly said our brand is blue collar. And you're not coaching to blue collar. It's not, if the kids weren't good enough and let's just, not to pick on Guelph, but, he's the one that shows some heart. Maybe if there were 22 Guelphies out there and they were giving it them all and he had that pressure and running back, but they just weren't good enough to take on the superstars of the game. Okay, cool. Give you another year. But you openly said, my game plan is blue collar. That's not what we're seeing. So what are you coaching them to do?
I think the thing that annoyed me even more about the Heppel stuff is at some point you we need to stop celebrating every player every time they take a shit and wipe their own ass, right? And there is a little bit of that. I kind of want to see that Clarkson approach, and we've joked about it, but it's bring your fucking mouth guards to training and we're shaving everyone's fucking head because there's too much mucking around going on at the moment. Everyone's taking it for granted like it's the easiest thing in the world, and there's no consequences for piss poor performance, right? And the problem now is with the stuff coming out of North Melbourne and the David Noble, it's almost like Rutten's probably afraid. Is there a fear to spray the players and tell grown men that their effort level isn't enough, or that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing and they need to get a rocket up them? Is that where we're at? And I think when you have Heppel come on and pretend to get so emotional that he's happy to say fuck 3 times on national television at 6:30, it's show me that out on the field, mate. If you're gonna get so fired up and so emotional, show me, because you laugh and you carry on and you talk about being your authentic self, but it comes to a fold where if your style isn't working, then it's time to change the style up, because we're getting left behind by the competition, and our worst case scenario is going to be ending up like a club with North Melbourne that has this huge war chest of cash, but no one wants to fucking go and play there. The only thing at the moment that's keeping us as a destination club is the fact that the actual custodians of the club that have gone before us have organized, Sheedy organized the Dreamtime games and the Anzac Day clashes. And you're this big Melbourne club. That's the only difference between us and North, is there's an attraction there to play multiple games a year, potentially in front of 100,000 people at the MCG. That's part of the attraction. But why would you want to like go to North and your big stalwart game against Fremantle or the Western Bulldogs is like your Good Friday appeal, and you get smoked by 80 points in front of 70,000 people. Like, fuck that. Like, fuck that for a choice when you've got other options on the table, you know?
Yeah.
Well, currently I feel like speaking to supporters of other clubs, Essendon are a bit of a joke at the moment. It's like the way we play, etc. Like no one's worried about playing us. And I wonder how much that's maybe filtering through to actual AFL players when they're looking at how we're playing and being like, why would I go there? Like, why would I play for Essendon when they just look like a basket case? And that worries me for the next couple of seasons, where we still need to pick up a few players if we're looking to challenge. So like trade has to be an option, but who would want to come to Essendon right now?
Maybe this is the plan, is to get ourselves to a point where we're the complete laughing stock of the AFL, and then fucking whammy, just surprise everyone like out the blue in the second half of the season.
We're not playing pool and trying to snoot and try to shark people here.
Boys. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm just kind of even looking ahead at the next few weeks. We've got Port in Port, then we've got a bye, then we've got Carlton, who, like, the only reason that you'd be worried about playing us if you're a Carlton supporter is just purely on the fact that your team has a habit of dropping games that they shouldn't be dropping. Like, that's the only thing you're potentially worried about. But I think that, like, and then St Kilda the week after, like, those are games that last year we were like going in being, other than the Port game, it's like we should expect to beat Carlton. And granted, we lost that, but at least it was a shootout. Both teams like scored over 100 points, and maybe one or two goes our way that didn't go our way and we win that game. Like St Kilda, we beat by 75 points last year. Like, we absolutely smashed them. So yeah, and then now you fast forward 12 months to a season where we're going to go above and beyond. We're going to play finals, and it's like, even the West Coast game is 4 weeks away. I'm like, fuck, like I'm worried about them. I'm already losing sleep over that game.
Ben, I'm worried about the bye and losing points there.
I'm very worried the next two games, to be honest. I feel the way Port Adelaide play and the way Carlton is playing, they could easily be 60-plus thumpings.
Yeah. If we were 7-3, do you think Tipper retires? Do you think half the reason he's like, there's an element of like, fuck, being like, this place at the moment is like no good for my mental health?
Nah, I don't believe that at all. You saw his speech. He fucking loves the club. It's not, it's obviously his standards as a footballer. And we talked about this like 2 weeks ago, about, the club coming out and saying that, he has to prove he wants it again and wants to be an AFL player. He's been off the list, the injury list, for a couple of months now. I just don't think he has that sort of mindset to be an AFL player anymore, and to put in the work that is needed to get to that standard. And if he couldn't get himself ready for, Dreamtime the G, which I know is very important to him, maybe that was the light bulb going on, saying, okay, if I can't get up for this game, then maybe I'm not going to get up for any game this season.
That would mean half our players would retire, Russ.
Yeah, but he's honourable, and I think he understands we need a list spot, and not just going to take a list spot for a paycheck and a free haircut.
It is interesting. It does actually bring up some questions, I guess, about the mid-season draft and what that means now. And to be honest, like, I reckon the pressure builds on Hurley to do the same thing. Like Tipper's come to the realization that like he's not going to make it back. I think Hurley at some point needs to stick the hand up and go like, I've been trying my best for 2 years to get back, and obviously my body's not at the point there, and here I am taking a list spot and $800,000 a year as part of the salary cap. So I reckon the pressure builds on Hurls even more now.
Right now, I'm looking at the mid-season draft and being like, who gives a fuck, though? Like, we're so far behind any other team in the comp. Like, what does it matter who we pick up?
Yeah, 100%. We need so many things to put the team back together. I was thinking this last week. We need a big-body midfielder. We need an outside midfielder. We need, a key forward. We need, another reliable, tall down back. Like, there's so many things we need to put us together as a full club.
We've got less
We
than a
can't.
minute.
What was that?
We've got less than a minute.
Yeah. Well,
Do you
I
think Stringer, Snelling, Langford, do you think those guys are, and Harry Jones, do you think they're the answers to those questions?
I'm intrigued, but I don't know to see how it changes the dynamic. Like we're defensively too. It doesn't matter how good our forward line is if no one's going to run back with the ball though.
Yeah. Well, boys, it's been a very dreary episode 26. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you both Thursday night to lament